Welcome, everybody, to the webinar for the National Technical Assistance Center of Transition, NTACT, Resources on Transition and Opportunities for Parent-Centered Partnerships. For audio, you see the number on the screen. If you have a question, you can please type it on the chat box, and we will address your questions. And please mute your speaker from the computer if you're using the phone at the same time, so we don't have that feedback. State over there on the chat box, type the name of your parent center and your state so we know who is who. And welcome, everybody. There is a message from Beth.
I don't know, to tell you the truth. So I take it, Beth, you're on the phone. You might want to hang up the phone and let the system call you.
There's another feature. Remember to mute your phone line. And let's use the chat for the conversations and questions and comments.
Lots of people here today. This is terrific. Deborah, you're muted. Deborah, you're muted.
Hi, this is Deborah Jennings. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you, Lisa. So let's get started. We have a really interesting webinar for you today on resources in transition and opportunities for parent-center partnership and for parent centers to be a part of the decision-making tables, particularly those tables around transition. Today we're joined by the National Technical Assistance Center for Transition. Catherine Fowler is here with us and is going to talk to us about what's going on with this center. It's a fairly new center with some expanded scope from what we were accustomed to, which was the National Secondary Transition Technical Assistance Center, or NTACT. And we're also going to be joined by the co-directors of the National RSA Technical Assistance Project, which is RAISE, Resources for Access, Independence, Self-Advocacy, and Employment. Welcome, everyone, and I am now going to be turning the presentation over to Catherine.
Okay. Are you all hearing me okay?
Sound great.
Is that good? Okay. So good afternoon. I'm Catherine Fowler. I'm the project coordinator for NTACT. And Deborah, I was impressed with how well you rolled through all of those, all of our lengthy name. So we have been funded now for just over a year, I guess about 15 months. And we are jointly funded by OSEP and RSA. So that's kind of an interesting, as Deborah suggested. And I think some folks may want to turn your speakers off on your computer if you're also on the phone, because I know that can have that echo thing going on. So I'm going to share a little bit of just briefly kind of who we are and what we do and how we have historically and are currently interacting with and intersecting with both SIPR and RAISE in our work. And hopefully continuing to provide some resources and benefit from the resources of the parent centers. So we are located at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, which is sort of our primary hub. And then we are also partners with, we have staff at the various locations you see on the screen if you're on computer. So we partner with folks with the Transition Coalition at Kansas, Transcend, the University of Oregon and Western Michigan University. So we're all over, but again, our primary spot is with UNC Charlotte, and then we, as I mentioned, we're dually funded, primarily funded by OSEP, but we also do have RSA funding, so we have two project officers, Celeste Avoke and Kristen Reinhardt-Fernandez, so that's who we report to. Our primary audience is SCAs, so state education agencies and state VR agencies, and then helping them get quality resources related to transition to their local providers. So LEAs, school districts, and VR service providers or VR offices. And then, of course, we also intersect with the various stakeholder groups that are engaged in transition planning, which, of course, includes students and families and others. Is that me? So these are our primary charges. We are to help get, again, resources out that can help states and local districts and local VR offices provide quality services around rigorous academic preparation for students with disabilities, career preparation for students with disabilities, in general, quality transition planning and services, resources and information around keeping students in school, again, all focused on students with disabilities, and helping states and districts use data as they're making decisions about programming. So those are kind of our 5 big areas. So we put out a lot of resources on those topics, and then other topics that simply intersect with secondary transition, and these are some of those. So I'm going to share in a second. I hope I can share our website and show a few of the things that we've been working on in this first year of ourselves. Some of you, I recognize names on the webinar, and I know some of you have given us some input on these products. So we, again, because we're charged with putting out information that's sort of that evidence-based practice stuff, we've tried to look at the research and do the work for educators and VR service providers around what is evidence-based. And so we've worked with a lot of other folks on kind of defining those levels of evidence, and this is what that looks like. For those that are really interested in that kind of thing, we have a lot of background information on how we've done that and why we've identified different categories. But basically, any of the resources that we've developed or we are saying are effective practices, the quality of the evidence behind them is solid, and then there's sort of different degrees of that evidence that these different levels of evidence-based, research-based, and promising practices walk through. We also will be trying to put out information on WIOA and ESSA and other policies that obviously have major implications for secondary education and for secondary students with disabilities. So as you all are quite familiar, the WIOA regulations related to Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act are not finalized yet, and once those are finalized, we'll be able to put out some more guidance. But we have been trying to help states, state education and state VR folks think through what does this look like as they're partnering more, as they are required to collaborate more. So we've been trying to help states anticipate those kinds of things. Certainly, as ESSA rolls out, I know you all have a lot of involvement in that as well, and we'll be just trying to provide guidance on the things that are specifically related to secondary students with disabilities. So that's another role that we have as the National TA Center on Transition. We, like many people, have kind of these levels of technical assistance, so we're available to everybody. Through our website primarily, we have resources available. We also work with states, again, our primary audience being state level, again, SEA and VR. We work on specific things in sort of time-limited ways. So that might be through a community of practice. It might be through a series of calls. It might be through some sort of resource development. And then we'll be working with 15 states, what we call intensively. And that's through an application process. We currently, I'll show a list in a second of who the states are so far that have been selected for intensive TA. These are the kinds of things that are available to anyone and everyone through our website again, and just answering the phone, and as many of you all do in your work. We do invite you to rate our website. I appreciate that term that was edited, and I'm going to show our website in just a second. We do have a listserv that you can also access through our website. We're on Facebook and Twitter, and we're actually now on Pinterest, and so we're kind of playing in all these various social media mechanisms to figure out the best way to get resources in the hands of folks that need to be using them and that we hope will be using them. So we're very open to feedback about how we disseminate and what we disseminate and how useful the resources are. So I'm going to take just a minute to show some things and welcome your feedback on the kinds of things that we're developing. These are the kinds of things that we do related to those, as I mentioned, targeted technical assistance activities. And I've already kind of referenced those. I'm going to speak in a minute about our Capacity Building Institute, which we think of as a targeted activity. I mentioned the intensive technical assistance, and these are the states we're working with currently. So we identified 3 states last year. We'll be working with those states closely through our cycle of funding, so through the end of 2019. And then we've just identified, again, through an application process, 7 additional states, and we'll be just adding those in. And then we are expecting to identify 5 more states next year to add to that list. So the application process for that 3rd group of states will be out next fall, and we'll begin working with them in 2017. And then we won't take on additional states, the idea being that if you're going to implement something, it takes a little bit of time to get it going, so we don't really want to start something brand new working with the state in our final year of funding. So we're pretty geographically diverse in the states that have been selected for technical assistance, and some of you I know are in some of these states. And so one of the things we're trying to do is, as we get involved in a state, we reach out to other various TA partners, and we want to be sure, I know Deborah and I have had conversations to be sure that parent centers are in the know if we're going to be working in a state, so that we can develop those partnerships. Transition is certainly one of those topics that interagency collaboration and collaboration in general is critically important, so we try to walk that walk. I'm sure we slip sometimes and forget to invite somebody to a call or a meeting, but we try to be really cognizant of things that are already happening in a state and what's going on. So if you're in any of those states and you're interested in what we're doing, please be in touch, and we're glad to get you involved in that work as well. These are some of the folks we partner with, and I know SIPR and RAISE do as well. If you're not in the world of RSA and you're more in the OSEP world, the YTAC is a new youth TA center from the rehab side, and they were just funded in January. The WINTAC is focused on WIOA implementation, also funded by RSA. And then we are working with those 2 centers really in sort of a work group and trying to figure out how to not step on each other's toes, and how to also make sure that we're not overwhelming states and in that work. So we're having a lot of conversations with those groups. Deborah, I see your question, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So historically, again, we're kind of just getting started in our intensive technical assistance work. Historically, as our previous center, we partnered depending on what the state was focused on, but we very often partner with our states as they host capacity building institutes and strategic planning with local districts. The parent centers in the states will be involved in that work and in the strategic planning. Currently, in the work that's happening in Alaska, I know we have been partnering in bringing in some of the Native and tribal organizations have been working through the parent centers to do that, which has been very helpful to the Department of Education, because I don't think historically that had been necessarily the way things were happening. So we've been trying to foster some of those relationships at the local level. So sometimes our role is sort of reminding states about parent centers and partnering with them, and sometimes the work is much more tangible, developing resources together and partnering to host events and provide joint training and that sort of thing. So I don't know if that answers your question. I guess it looks lots of different ways depending on the context of the state, but those are the kinds of things. You were asking, Lauren has asked about Centers for Independent Living. We don't specifically collaborate, I guess, at a national level related to Centers for Independent Living, but certainly, again, in the states that we're working in, depending on what they're working on, and certainly related to issues around the implementation of WIOA, partnering with Centers for Independent Living is certainly important to the work that we do. I don't know if, I think maybe that kind of answers the question. These are, again, just other partners that, and I deliberately put all those silly acronyms because it's ridiculous how we all use those. But IDC and NCSI are OSEP-funded centers, one related to primarily IDA data, and the other one, as you all are fairly familiar, is related to the SIP work, so all the results-driven accountability work for states or state education agencies. You're certainly familiar with SIPR and RAISE, and you all are big partners of ours. The College and Career Readiness and Success Center, the National Center on Intensive Interventions, PEPNET, the National Center on Deafblindness, the National Center on Educational Outcomes. Those are some of the other groups that we intersect with fairly regularly on products that we're developing. And then there are various rehab-funded centers that are focused on different products. Products and populations, and so we do partner with those as well. And then NCWDU, the National Collaborative on, National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability for Youth, we partner with them a good bit as well, and then some professional organizations that intersect with transition. We have a Capacity Building Institute coming up, and some of you have been involved in that in the past, and some of you may be involved with that this year. It's in Charlotte, and it is called an institute and not a conference, because the idea is that folks come and get content, but they also participate with an interagency or interdisciplinary state team, and they engage in strategic planning. So that's, the difference. Those team planning sessions are facilitated, and there's an agenda posted currently on our website, which I'll show you in a second, so you can see where there's some content that might be of interest. We are excited to have more parents engaged in that, and we actually this year we've been working closely with RAISE and SIPR to have not only sessions that are focused on family involvement and family engagement, but also some ways to prepare family members to participate on teams and to prepare some of our education and VR partners to partner with family members participating on teams. So we have some resources to help prepare our teams to partner better together. As you all can probably appreciate, we've had extremely successful collaboration on teams with family members, and we've had situations that maybe were less successful. So we're trying to be a little bit more proactive this year and having our teams receptive to family participation and parent participation as stakeholders. And we actually have a workshop that will be, that's really mostly being led with Deborah and Connie Hawkins and Josie Badger and some others who are helping lead a workshop on meaningful family engagement and real engagement in systems change kinds of issues. So that's a big focus of our institute this year, which we're excited about. So is it possible for me to share the website at this point, Lisa, or is it better to just talk about some stuff?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think perhaps if
that might be risky.
It's always risky, technology.
Yeah, why don't we, you know what, I'm just going to, I know we're close to time anyway, and I can just tell you, Lisa had posted a couple of resources that I had sent ahead of time. Our website, I'll actually type it down here in the chat box. Let's make sure I type correctly. So transitionta.org is our website, and there you will find, hopefully, resources. Primarily, probably what you would be interested in is in the section on transition services. There are additional resources there that are broken down by topics. There's also, in a database decision-making section, there's a lot of resources around the SPP indicators, which I think sometimes are useful, so related primarily to the indicators for state education agencies connected to transition, so things around Indicator 13, which is the transition compliance resources, Indicator 14, which are the post-school outcome resources, the age of majority resources that we helped develop with Zipper are on the website in the transition planning section. And then the resources that are posted here, there's a quick guide to competitive integrated employment. We've actually just recently shared that with some of the RAISE leadership and got some really nice suggestions on ways to maybe chunk out pieces of that into just more useful handout type things. It's a pretty dense guide, but our quick guides are intended to provide just a common language on certain topics. So competitive integrated employment was one that we wanted to address. There's also the second resource listed there is a school and community and business partnerships guide, which is just exactly what it sounds like. It's intended to help schools and community members and businesses, and has a section for families as well on developing work-based learning experiences for students. And then there's this family role piece down at the bottom is actually just a piece from that guide, but it's a visual that that summarizes that piece nicely. And so we've chunked out some of the resources. The guide is actually 30-something pages, but then we've tried to chunk out some of the resources into a little bit shorter pieces of information. So those are some of the things that might be of interest to this group that are on the website. And with that, I'm a couple minutes over, but I'll pause for some questions, I think.
That was terrific, Kathy.
Well, good. It's kind of quick, but maybe too long on some things. So if there are certain questions about the Institute or about resources that you're looking for, again, we're primarily charged with working at the state level with education and VR people, but we certainly know how critical it is for families and for parent centers have been a tremendous part of our work in a lot of the states that we've worked deeply in. And so I was really glad to have the opportunity to chat with you all today. And we are very open to feedback about products and or adapting products to be more useful for different audiences. So any questions or thoughts? Deborah, anything else you all needed?
I think that was great, Catherine. Thanks so much. I do have one question. Well, maybe it's more than one question, but if you could just talk a little bit about the sort of the framework that you guys use for working with states in terms of their planning, and particularly around the component that is related to our parent center work, which would be around family and community engagement?
Yeah, so we use, there's, a variety of sort of frameworks out there, and I know one that is pretty commonly used more recently, which I'm not sure what you guys, I think you may use this one a little bit, but the Guidepost for Success. We actually use the taxonomy for transition programming, which we've crosswalked with the Guidepost, and it's a pretty solid crosswalk. But we use that taxonomy to frame kind of all of our content. And we've actually just recently updated the taxonomy based on new research and wanted to make sure it was, more current, and we added in some things around family expectations, actually parent expectations, and added in some pieces around school climate. And a lot of pieces around vocational rehabilitation, which were good additions. We use that framework to guide the strategic planning that happens at the Institute, and there is a section which is the family involvement section is technically the term that's used, but under that are pieces around family engagement, family empowerment, and family expectations. And so teams are walked through at the Institute these 5 different components of the taxonomy. The first is essentially student-focused planning, so anything around student involvement, youth leadership. Student development is the second piece, which is all around student skills, so academic skills and employment skills and independent living skills. And then the third piece is interagency collaboration. The fourth piece is the family involvement. And then the fifth piece are program structures, which are kind of all the stuff that needs to be in place to make all those other things happen. So teams walk through each of those components and do a needs assessment, looking at their data of kind of where they are and where they want to be in each of those areas, and then they develop a plan. So we have, over time, we've had more and more teams focus on that family engagement piece, and Deborah and I have had some conversations about, fortunately, it looks like teams are getting to a little bit deeper level with what they mean by family engagement, but one of the reasons we're offering the workshop that we are this year is to really help state people get beyond just, we know it's important and we want to do it, but to really dig deeply into meaningfully engaging families from the get-go in their systems change kinds of efforts and the things they're doing around, whether it's their SIP or their, creating a new diploma or whatever the issues are around secondary transition, that they're really working closely with their parent centers all along the way in providing training and looking at data and a lot of the things that that you all are really good resources for. And sometimes I think some states do a great job with that, and some are still kind of in a struggle with that. So that's a long answer. Sorry. I don't know if that was what you were asking, Deborah.
No, Catherine, that was perfect, because I think it's important for parent centers, as we're talking about transition, to really think about, what does that mean in terms of my interactions and my partnerships with my state. And I guess what you guys call your taxonomy is a really excellent tool that states are using and that parent centers can familiarize themselves with in preparation for their conversations with their states. And so that's why I think your response was a really good one. I know that taxonomy is has not been finalized, but when...
Well, it's as of today. This is hot off the press information, and you guys are getting it first. It is finalized, and it's being posted on our website, hopefully as we're speaking, and so there'll be a little blast coming out this afternoon. So when you get that, you will get the brand new, hot off the press, new taxonomy. So, so use that, and that is, I'm glad you mentioned that. That is a good resource for if you're going to be participating with your state team. It would be a great resource to have in advance. So, thanks.
Great. So as soon as you have that available, then we will make sure that we include it with the resources for this webinar, as well as posting it on the parentcenterhub.org. Wow, I mean, it's special because when I talked to some of you guys last week, it was, we can't talk about it too much yet because it's not yet final. So.
Now it's final. Woo-hoo.
That's great. So are there any other questions or comments? I don't see any in the box. I do have a question for the group. And if you look at the top of your toolbar, you'll see an icon of a person holding up their hand. And if you are in a state where your state has a SIMR, or a state identified measurable result around graduation or post-school outcomes, if you could click on the raise your hand and let us know if you're one of those, if you're in a state that has a SIMR around graduation. We have two. We're in West Virginia. Lauren Agaretis, raise your hand. Okay, so it looks like we have 3 or 4 states that are represented on the state where there is the SIMR around graduation, and many of your states are at this point in the results-driven accountability place on their way to putting together their phase 2 of their statewide systemic improvement plan. And so we're just going to talk really very informally and generally about how our parents are serving on those kinds of decision-making groups. Beth Schaffner is joining us from the Peak Parent Center, and she's going to talk about her experience. I believe there may be a couple of additional parent centers who may also want to talk about their experience, particularly around state planning for around graduation, transition, post-school outcomes, and the implementation of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, also known as WIOA. So when we're talking about parent centers being involved in decision-making groups, it's important for us to really think about why is it that we need to serve on these decision-making groups. We all have a lot of work to do with individual families and not nearly enough time or resources to get all of that work done. But it is something that we should all look at how and what kinds of ways can we be involved in these decision-making groups. This is particularly important at this juncture because I think things were fairly quiet over the last couple of years, but right now there's some really big plans that are underway in all of our states. As parent centers funded by OSEP, we're very familiar, all of us, with what's happening in terms of the SIP and the state systemic improvement plans that are really framing where our state special education and early intervention programs are to go as it relates to particular measurable results. And so both our Part C agencies in our state and our Part B agencies are putting together stakeholder groups, or have put together stakeholder groups, and are looking at how are we engaging stakeholders in the various phases of these improvement plans. So as we look across the Parent Center network, we want to make sure that as many of the states are including parent training and information centers as well as community parent resource centers in that discussion in terms of putting together the plan, and then going forward from now, the actual implementation of the state systemic improvement plan. Also, we have the new education law that takes the place of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, or is the latest reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, and that is the Educating Every Student Success Act, Every Student Success Act, ESSA, and as we are in the process right now, there's a lot that's going on there in terms of implementation. We know from our webinar just a couple of weeks ago with the OSAP that there is, I believe it's at this very moment, the negotiated rulemaking committee is gathering to make decisions about what their recommendations are going to be in terms of the drafting of the regulations for implementation of ESSA. And those regulations will be moving along over these next months, and we're going to be continuing to provide parent centers with information about their progress and about all of those decisions where we need to be at the table in various ways, particularly in terms of providing comments at the federal level. But then once the regs are adopted, we'll all need to pay attention to how our states are making decisions about what the actual implementation looks like in each of our states. And then the next piece is the next thing that we're also experiencing. There are a lot of big plans going on, ladies and gentlemen. That is the implementation of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And I know in our state that the Department of Labor in our state has already submitted their plan. Over the course of the last year, they had a couple of opportunities for stakeholder input. And last week they announced that they had submitted a plan and that if we had any comments on the plan, we can submit them, and they may or may not include those comments, or they may or may not revise the plan at the end of May, beginning of June, in terms of how they are going to move forward with the Department of Labor. So for each of our states, those plans are going into the Department of Labor. How, in looking at those plans, what does it say about implementation, particularly around the Rehabilitation Act and ADA, and what are the implications for individuals with disabilities and their being able to access the necessary services and supports in order to be competitively employed. That's important for us to be aware of because it is impacting our young people as they are going through those transition ages and going into adulthood. Okay, I see in the box that Lauren Agaretti is sharing the webinar that was done by AUCD, the Association for University Centers of Excellence on Disability. And so you guys might want to check out that resource, particularly if you have any questions about ESSA and individuals with disabilities. And there are going to be a lot of resources that are going to be coming out over the next few weeks and months on that. So when we want to make sure that we're serving on these decision-making groups, and one of our colleagues in the Parent Center Network has developed an excellent resource around serving on decision-making groups. And it's a resource that we can use with our staff in terms of helping our staff to understand how these decision-making groups work, what is involved, how these groups should work, and how do we participate, including, how do we look at data, because we know that data is really a key component of almost every discussion about impacting the lives of young people and, with basically infants, toddlers, youth, and young adults. And so this is an excellent resource, and it includes a guidebook that you can download and print, but also there are online modules where you can, each of the sections, each of the topical areas, you can actually participate in an online training module that will walk you through a presentation. It includes quizzes throughout, and if you don't do well on the quiz, you can't go any further, but it's been done really, it's a really excellent, high-quality resource that is available to all of us through the work of the Wisconsin facets, which has the parent training.
In English.
Which has the Parent Training and Information Center and the Regional Parent Technical Assistance Center. Right now, the guidebook is available in English, and it's also available in Spanish. The modules have not been able to obtain the resources to actually translate the modules into Spanish, but that is something that they're working on, and we're working on with them in terms of making that resource available in terms of the recorded modules in both languages. So just for a couple of minutes, a couple of our parent centers are going to talk a little bit about their real life experience in working together with their state, or what it takes to work with your state on some of these key topical areas. I'm going to turn it over to Beth Schaffner, and Beth is at the Peak Parent Center, where she leads Peak's RSA-Funded Parent Training and Information Center project, which is called SHIFT and SHIFT Transition. Beth, are you with us?
I am with you. Can
yes,
you
I
hear
can.
Me?
Thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. So this is the real Parent Center of Colorado, real life. And I'm glad you said that, Deborah, because we are very happy to share kind of part of our journey and where we are with collaborating with our state agencies, but we certainly know that we have not arrived or reached any perfection in that area. So this is kind of an honest peer-to-peer kind of sharing, and because over the years we have been kind of up and down as far as our what we perceived as what was important with being a part of and collaborating with the state agencies. And certainly it's difficult at times, and I think all of us involved with parent centers know that sometimes we're kind of brought in after the fact rather than engaged with in an authentically collaborative manner. But that's our goal, and I'm going to speak specifically to the WIOA implementation, and we do have an RSA-funded, one of 8 RSA-funded projects here where we're collecting and also developing and piloting resources and information that we eventually want to share with other parent centers. But as a part of that, we have really renewed efforts to engage at the state level, and we are experiencing success. And in Colorado, another reality is that there is some flux in Colorado with our state VR agency, and so there was regrouping going on with that group anyway, and then WIOA came along, and it's really provided an opportunity for all of us to relook at how we're working together to authentically implement the best practices that are a really exciting part of WIOA. And so we have been involved as the Parent Center on our State Rehab Council for quite a few years. And but I must say that it really has become the age of opportunity there as well, and we're experiencing and moving towards a more collaborative level of involvement there. A big breakthrough for us, and this relates to the Capacity Building Institute that Catherine, that's sponsored through NTACT and that Catherine was talking about. We actually were planning on participating last year in the Institute through our RSA grant project. And one of our peers who is on the call today, Renee from North Carolina, who has been very involved with the transition work through NTACT and other groups, actually spoke up for us regarding the fact that we hadn't been invited to be a part of our state team. And sure enough, our peer helped us, and we were invited at that point, and since then have been involved in the development of a statewide community of practice on transition, as well as working on a state transition institute that's coming up this summer, and presenting and being involved on the more at the ground floor level on that as far as developing that. So we are moving forward. We feel like we still have a ways to go, but it feels good that we are all moving together more collaboratively. And I did want to mention too that part of our RSA project is that for these first several years we've been collaborating with the PTI in Arizona and implementing and piloting our resources there as well. And I want to put a plug in to Arizona, for Arizona, and encourage you to speak to that Raising Special Kids Parent Center, because they are ahead of the crowd in a way as far as their involvement with their state agencies, and their state agencies are doing some very good things around engaging with youth and working collaboratively, not only their Department of Education transition group, but also their independent living center and their vocational rehabilitation, and some great folks down there. And they have a very highly developed transition community of practice in Arizona that we're actually starting to use as a model for us in Colorado. So I think it just points to the fact that we're all on that road towards success, and it's important to keep talking to each other and keep working together.
Thanks, Beth. That is really interesting. The Capacity Building Institute that's hosted by NTACT. I've participated for a number of years, as have Renee Swink at ECAC and Sean Roy at the Pacer Center, folks from Ripon in Rhode Island, and also a number of people from Tennessee and Maine. And for a number of years, it was just sort of a smattering of parent centers, but last year we were able to, and when I say we, I mean all of us, were sort of making sure that we tried to the extent that we could to get onto those teams for our state. And then, as Beth said, some of us arrived in North Carolina, found out there was a team for our state, and figured out a way to be included in those state teams. even if your state is attending and maybe you're not able to attend, it's really a good idea to follow up with them and make sure you stay connected with the work, because as Catherine Fowler said, there is a really important component around family engagement, community engagement, and a number of other areas where, as parent centers, we have a lot of experience and knowledge that can really assist states in having strong plans, but also implementing strong policies and practices. Are there any, so this is an opportunity for other parent centers who are doing work in their state around transition or workforce innovation and opportunity to share your experiences as well. Are there any of you who would like to unmute your line using *6 and talk a little bit about the work that you've been able to do in these areas with your state? Everyone is so shy. Do I want to call on anybody? Catherine put a note in the chat that says if you're planning to attend the CBI and haven't had communication with someone from your state, please be in touch with her, and she'd be glad to be sure that there are some pre-institute conversations. Let's see, typing. Thank you for the wonderful information. Whitmer, you're very welcome. And we're going to share a few resources over the next few minutes, and then that are going to be helpful as well. We do want to take an opportunity to introduce to some of you and to reintroduce to others of you the National RAISE Technical Assistance Center and the RSA-Funded Parent Training and Information Centers. And I believe Josie Badger is on the line. Josie?
Hello. Sorry about that.
Yes,
yes, and Pitt Kinsel is also on.
Can you hear me, Joe?
Yep.
Yes. So, ladies, if you could take it away and talk to us about the RAISE Center and the RSA PTI.
So I will go ahead and start with the introduction of those, for those of you who aren't familiar with the RAISE Center, another acronym full of Resources for Access, Independence, Self-Advocacy, and Employment. And what the RAISE Center is our National Technical Assistance Center around transition. And basically our first charge is to support the RSA parent centers, which we'll get to in a very quick moment. But basically it's to help improve knowledge and skills for serving families and youth with disabilities, improve the resources that we have available, and increase collaboration both across our parent centers and with traditional and non-traditional partners around transition. We hope also to be a really good voice for empowerment of youth and parents and to enhance the lives of people with disabilities. That's kind of it in a nutshell. You see our faces. That's myself, Peggy, Josie, Deborah, and Daniel, the newest member of our team. You all look like movie stars. Yeah, right. I have to say that. It's such a glamour shot. Well, we appreciate the comment, no matter how much it's exaggerated. But I'll take it at my age. This is the RAISE team. I think we got there, but our main goal is to increase parent-centered knowledge and skills for serving youth with disabilities and their families. There's our little Wordle. Go ahead, Deborah. And these are the products that we're delivering at this point. We have an annual leadership summit, which is getting ready to happen in conjunction with NTACT. We have resources, we have webinars, we have an e-newsletter that if you are not on the list to get, you need to get on it. It's a fantastic resource, current, and we're very, very pleased with it. And I'm going to let Josie talk a minute about the website because her expertise far exceeds mine in the website domain.
Thanks, Peg. Pardon my voice. I think I'm losing it. But we have a new website. As you can see, there's a little flyer on the right side there is raisecenter.org. And on that site, we have information about our RSA parent centers. We have information about Raise and who we are. But the biggest part of our site is hosting resources. We have a search engine on there that searches multiple sites for resources on transition, and within the near future, all of our webinars will be up on that site as well. Further, there is a Facebook page as Raise Center. We have quite a few resources almost every day. There's a new resource on the Facebook page, so please follow us on there as well.
Thanks, Jos. And we are looking for feedback. So let us know how we're doing and anything you want to contribute to our resources or what you think we need to be doing better. We want to hear about it.
Yep.
Our next slide is the introduction into the other RSA centers. So here they are. There is included, as I think Lisa wrote in the chat box, a document you can download that has the information about the other RSA-funded parent centers. But here's a quick link to the 7 centers right now. And that's, all right, so the Link Center, Opening Doors is in Washington State. Reach for Transition is in the Northeast region. Shift, you heard from Beth already, is Colorado and Arizona. Stellar is out in Missouri. Project Launch is at the Pacer Center. And the New York State Transition Partners includes these 3 centers. So as you can see, a lot of them have one state or have a region of states, depending on what their project is encompassing. They all are kind of a little bit different in what their focus is and what their deliverables are. So get to know them. They all have really, really great staff, a lot of resources, and a lot of information to share. So take the opportunity to learn about all of them. I think that's everything unless somebody has a question. Somebody's typing. I don't know what else they want. In Virginia.
Thank you for joining our Facebook. I already saw someone like us, so thank you.
Thank you, Josie and Peggy. Are there any questions or comments? We're right about 2 minutes from now. I saw that Summer from PC posted that they're working with their, doing a collaboration with the Community College Coalition, which is really exciting because there's such a big emphasis now on how our community colleges and other post-secondary institutions helping individuals with disabilities to be prepared for competitive employment. Someone notes that Opening Doors is in Washington State. I think it did say WA. No, it's the WI? Oh, boy. And
no, they said it's Wisconsin, but it isn't in Wisconsin. It is in Washington State. It's a CPRC, and is focusing on linguistically and culturally diverse populations and transition projects. So especially for the pay folks, it would be a really good thing to connect with those guys.
Yeah. It's all of the RSA funded centers are also OSEP funded. Opening Doors for Multicultural Families is funded as a CPRC. All of the other lead parent centers are funded as parent training and information centers. Many of those who have put together coalitions include CPRC, so there are a number of CPRCs who are part of the RSA work, which is really exciting. So as always, we have created a resource page that will provide you with where you can download the PowerPoint presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and you'll be able to listen to the recording, and we'll be posting that shortly after the webinar. And then you'll also be able to access many of the resources that Catherine has shared and those that Peggy and Josie shared. And if you have resources related to this topic that you'd like to share across the network, please do send them to us, and we can post those as well on this webinar page and in the parentcenterhub.org. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Catherine Fowler from NTACT, and then here's the contact information for the staff from Parent Center Hub, the Center for Parent Information and Resources, also from the RAISE Center. We look forward to hearing from you. I should also note that we have a new member of the SIPR team, and that's Renee Swink, who is joining us and giving us a little bit of time to help us in terms of some collaborations in terms of product development. And I think Renee is on here, and she's also very instrumental in the NTACT Capacity Building Institute. So those of you who come, you will see her there. Again, thank you. Your feedback is super duper important, and we really need to hear from you. So you can click on the link in the chat box or on the slide, the live link, where you'll be able to quickly fill out. It's really brief. I don't think it's 5 questions, but small amount, but great value for us. Again, thanks for your time, and we'll see you again in 2 months for the next the next webinar in our series. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, everybody.